And we are live. Hello and welcome to Developer Insights. I'm David.
And I'm Justin.
And together we are the leads on game development and design here at Codename.
We also founded Codename too.
We're going to be your hosts for this episode and for every episode.
Because when we're not here, the show doesn't happen.
That still remains true.
Today is our 7th episode. Wait, am I reading this right? We always do the episode numbers in binary, right?
No. Why would you think it's our 7th episode? We've done more than 100 episodes.
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. I'm stuck in a box again, so I'm not thinking straight.
Get it together, man. We got questions to answer.
Okay, all right. So, audience, if you're asking a question today, just to help me out, please be sure to specify the base of any numbers you use so I don't get confused.
What? It's the weirdest request I think we've ever done on the show. Is there anything else you'd like today's audience to do?
Yes, I would appreciate a good huzzah in chat after each question is answered.
Okay, being in a box makes you weird.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, we are here to answer development and design questions about Idle Champions.
If you don't ask any questions, however, you may just have to suffer through Justin's one-man reenactment of WALL-E. Oh, I love that movie.
Yes, but I'm only going to have time to reenact like the first 20 minutes or so, and as you know, there's no spoken dialogue during that time, so to be fair, it might be a little bland.
Well, I certainly hope we get questions then.
And I hope all those questions are in base 10.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, as always, we have pulled forward some questions from the previous show that we did not get to, so we're going to answer some of those while we are waiting for new questions to come in. But before we get to those, we do have some updates. No, I don't have updates on those. What am I talking about? I do have a list of items that are still flagged to get looked at by the dev team, a list that I do in fact need to update, but I do have some items on that. But we'll get to that. Without any further stalling for time, I'll read that list and then we'll get into the questions. Yeah, all right, what do we have here? In fairness, we did actually and have been each week going through and pulling out all of the items that have been flagged during the show and putting them into a fixed list that Peter has been looking at, but I haven't updated this in progress list as part of the questions doc here, and I really should, but because I think at this point we're probably up to double the items we got here, Justin. Okay. Anyway, as far as the in-progress items go, we are still going to increase the bounty contract limit use. The target limit is 1,000. We're going to add a tooltip to the potion so that you can see what is active without clicking. There'll be a sort and filter added to the quest tracker. The option to open, show, or buy chests directly from the champion sheet. We still haven't looked into the mobile minimized view, which, again, as I've said numerous times, feels like something we probably should just be able to enable. We're going to add attack types and roles to the bench /seat information champion hover pop-up and add an option to always show all of the bench seats, even if you don't have enough gold to show them yet. Whew. Now this gets longer. It's going to be going to be more to go through.
If we actually did add all of the items from the to-do like Dev Insights debrief doc, I think we'd probably end up spending like half the show just going through the list. We have gotten a lot of things that we need to do from this show.
Yeah,
we would like to do.
Like taking a quick glance at it here, we've got like updating the Electrum chest priority. We've got that enormous post that Dronithus posted 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Saving a special slot that saves your last loaded formation. An option for leveling up 1,000 at a time. Improving the speed of chest openings so you don't have to see the cards.
I didn't mean actually read through it so that we would take half the show for that. Okay. We are actually getting questions, so we can probably get started.
Oh, Peter was actually looking at the artwork quality issue on iOS. Like the icons that are included had like a compression issue, so we were actually just looking at that before the show. Yeah, there's quite a list here. Anyway, we can move on. We don't need to use the whole show just to reiterate the items that we're going to look at.
Awesome. Okay, so we've pulled forward a couple of questions from last week. A couple of questions from last week's episode.
First one is for me. This is a change of pace.
I know, exactly, right? So this is a question from Joe Bone, UK. I thought this was an interesting question to answer. They asked, any chance of open sourcing any part of the game or allowing community contributions for improvements or bug fixes?
Well, that is an interesting question. I feel like this is something that I should have flagged in advance so I had a better answer prepared.
I did. I had it in this document like at least 12 minutes ago.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think really there's a whole lot of I'm not really sure how that would work, honestly. And I think at this point, like, there's a lot of sort of proprietary bits in there that we wouldn't be super willing to kind of put out there. Yeah, no, this is something I'd have to think about what made sense, because it's definitely a tricky one, and at this point the game is just so large. Yeah, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that off the top of your head, Justin, but it does seem
off
like
the top of my head, it does seem like there's a lot of challenges to that. It doesn't like a commercial kind of game like this doesn't seem like it would really lend itself to open sourcing, honestly. So I'm not entirely sure how we would do that, or even what parts of it we could do versus not do. It's all pretty intertwined.
Yeah, it does raise the question, like, as if there are examples of games that have done that and how that worked for them. I'd just be curious to know, not that it'd be something that we would do, but it'd be something that I'd be curious to see how it worked.
And especially live service games. Like, I could see, like Skyrim gets modded to here and back, right? So, things like that, when they're not really live servicing those games and putting out new content and changing, scripts and engine calls and that sort of stuff every week, like, that makes sense. I think it'd be much, much harder for something like Idle Champions.
Yeah. Okay, next question. This one is from Wibbly Johnny, and they would like to know, could the champion portraits on the bench have indicators / symbols for details such as alignment, race, class, role, gender, and affiliation?
Yeah, this is something we've probably talked about before. I think it'd be interesting to kind of have options for showing those. I don't think we'd want to show them all by default, because it just starts to get visually very, very busy to have a whole bunch of stuff on there. It brings you back to the old, like, the memes about WoW rating and, like, the mods that you'd have, and you're basically just, instead of fighting this cool monster with all these visual effects that some artists spent months and months designing, you're just looking at little bars on your screen as they go up and down and can't even see the mobs behind it. So I think that I think that somewhere down the road, if we're doing sort of a quality of life pass or on the bench, that we could look at having some options for showing some of this stuff. But I think we'd want to find a way to do it that wasn't super disruptive to just the visual flow of what's going on there.
Okay. Next question. This is from Taladis. Is it possible to allow users to run completed variants for no reward? Because some variants offer niche uses for certain quest completions.
Yeah, I see this question. We get this question a lot, and so I wanted to answer it again on this show, just so that we could say that we've answered it from time to time. My initial answer to this has always been, it's not something we really want to do. I am leaning towards allowing it. At this point, we just have to look and see what kind of implications there are for doing that, because we really don't like there being variants where the kind of community suggestion is just never complete this variant, because you want it to be able to do something else super fast. The flip side to that, the reason I've been so hesitant to do it has been because, we don't really want to have those types of variants that have something that is kind of broken in the variant, such that you can farm a certain thing or use certain attacks or do a bunch of healing or do a bunch of tanking much faster than you can do just in the regular game, because it does lead to these kinds of situations where you don't want to ever complete that, because it's a useful mechanic to have. So I'm still being pulled in both directions on that, but I'm leaning more towards trying to find a way to allow that, or for getting those mechanics somewhere else, so that they're kind of always accessible to players who want to use them in certain situations.
Okay. All right. That was the last question from last show. Moving on to new questions from today. First one out of the gate is from the 22 Dragons. And they would like to know any chance for a Ceramorphous feat for Valentine. Not only would she be great for a formation perspective with AA, but she also should be a tadpole. Should have a tadpole in her brain story-wise, if I'm not wrong. Viconia doesn't even work with Karlach since she doesn't buff good people.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting kind of point. Mars is noted here that, yeah, Valentine literally does have an alien parasite in her brain. So, yeah, I could see potentially doing that down the road. I think there's a bunch of champions that we kind of have our eyes on for potentially doing Ceramorphosis feats at some point. So I think that I think that it's possible that could happen down the road, but I wouldn't want to, promise anything right now.
Okay.
Next question here is from Garawar, who asks or says, since this season dropped, there's been a lot of hitches/stalling, like the game is just pausing itself at random times. Any word on when we'll see fixes for this? It's happening even on high-end computers.
Huh. I mean, this was something that I thought that Peter thought that they had sorted out, was like an issue with Dahani. Is that right? Was that
I think it was Dahani was, yeah, there was the low-hanging fruit there when we were looking into this.
But if it's not the case, or maybe I'm going to have to check in with Peter and see if they didn't get a fix in for that.
I know they did get a fix in for Dahani, and they were seeing it, but there might be some other stuff going on, I think.
And Mars is adding a comment here that it's not even when using Dahani, it's just always.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, well, we're going to have to look into that then.
Yeah, I think there was an issue with Dahani earlier in the season. I think we fixed that, but I think there's still something going on there.
Okay, I'm going to check in with Peter on that. You want to? There we go.
Highlighted.
Okie dokie. Next question. This is from Dice42. Why did you end up capping Will's folk hero buff at 4 stacks? There are only 4 champions that can get more than 4 stacks at this point in time, outside of Voronika RNG. So the explicit limit seems unnecessary.
Yeah, so this is a really good question. This kind of comes down to a bit of design side stuff that I'm happy to talk about. But the thing that we have found when we do caps on champions, or even when we don't do caps on champions, is that players, people who are min-maxing, people who are really into like the math of stuff and finding the most efficient formations, will always feel like the biggest number they can possibly get is the number they have to get, or else a champion is worthless. So with Will, we wanted to kind of set that goal low enough that there were going to be a bunch of places where you could do it, and such that if there was like 1 or 2 formations where maybe you could get 6 stacks or something like that, that it wouldn't feel like you could only use Will in those situations and he was worthless in all other situations. So we just wanted to make sure that sort of goal that people tend to make for champions that have stacks and have limits on those stacks was more accessible than it would have been if we'd set it to 5 or 6, because like you say, there's only 4 champions that could get more than 4 stacks at this time. That folks have found, and so they might have thought, oh, Will is only useful with those 4 champions and in those specific formations, which we didn't want to have. We wanted to make sure that Will felt more useful sort of across the board. It also makes it easier for us to balance. Will is extremely powerful at 4 stacks. It's actually a little bit silly. So we kind of balanced him more around 3 stacks, but we wanted to have some power there if you could find a 4-stack thing specifically to Will. There's other champions where we kind of balance them around whatever we set the actual cap to, and there's other ones that we balance around lower numbers, not expecting people to necessarily get to that cap. But we've definitely, I can't think of the example of it, but I know there was another champion we did recently where folks we put out a champion with a certain cap. And I just remember we got a bunch of feedback like, it's too hard to get to that cap. This champion's useless without being able to get to that cap. And it was like, well, no, we balanced it around like halfway to the cap. So it's still very useful, even if you can't get there. But yeah, I think that kind of covers. Well, apparently my flame is flickering. Oh yeah, look, my fire is on, and your fire over there is off. What's going on with
Okay.
that?
Um,
That's some lazy backgrounding.
yeah, it looks like my background's actually a JPEG.
What? No.
Yeah, sorry. My bad. And I'd copy yours in, but yours is coming from your end, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got the animated one here.
Sorry.
Alrighty.
I could spend 5 minutes fixing it, or we could move on to the next question. Shall we
Let's
have a
move
vote?
on. Let's move on to the next question.
Sure. This question is from Phoenixian Ultimatum. Can we spec choices for nerds to lock in second or third color choices? Rerolling to get the color combination that I want can take several minutes at a time. If not, the majority of the run is spent shaking the box. Sometimes I get the same undesired color combination 2 to 4 times in a row. And or can we get a feat to lock in the color combination once we hit it so that wandering familiars do not hit it?
Mm-hmm. So we've gotten this question a couple of times, and I'm just looking up Pete and I actually talked about this for a while. Silly us. We talked about it, and we actually we sillily talked about it. Yes. But we did come up with a bit of a solution that I think would work for what players are looking for. With the nerds, we haven't passed it on to design, or not to design, to development, because development is super duper busy. Tune in February 8th to find out why. And so I think we, at some point, we will probably get around to implementing those feats and having basically a way to kind of more customize your nerds. Yeah, it's not something that's kind of immediately coming out, and it's not related to spec choices. It's related to basically some feats. But yeah.
All right. Next is from Garwar. When are we going to see changes to how Narak builds key points? I'm saying that right? Right?
Yeah, the second time.
Key.
Yeah.
Hey, I got the Ceramorphosis on the second try.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah.
The new ultimate is just a non-starter.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Narak needs a second look. We've talked about it before. We've had a couple ideas of how to kind of band-aid it, but none of them have really been super exciting in terms of like permanently fixing it. So I think that we'll have to take a deeper look at that. That is more than just kind of. I think we talked about some of the feats on the stream like a month or two ago, but what is going on? Okay. So yeah, I agree that it needs changes, but we don't really have a timeline on it right now. Is it? No, still not. You're still not working.
Where did I put it?
Did you put it like behind your? No, I don't know.
I know. Somehow I managed to lose it in here.
All right, so the next question here is from SailNet, and they ask, Justin, if you could be a developer/designer for a day rather than a designer/developer, what changes would you make? I feel like we got this question last week, and I gave it to you in terms of, I think it was something more along the lines of like, what's something that you never really do on design that you would like to do? I can't remember if you had a good answer to it, and I'm basically just saying this in order to stall for time while I try to think of a good answer to this question. But it's tough. I mean, the developer, on the developer side, like you can't really do anything in a day. I think I'm not really sure what I would change in Idle Champions. There's just so many there's so many, the systems are so intertwined and everything's so like 6.5, 7.5 years into the development of this game. Um, the back end tech is, it's pretty ingrained, and I think changing any single thing about it could cause a lot of issues. And hey, you started your fire. Good for you.
Perfect.
So I think that this is it's a really hard question, honestly.
No, they're giving me a hard
If I
time.
could be, if I could be like a developer for like a few months, or like 6 months or something like that, I'd really like to find a way to um, really update the mobile UI, and try and get the mobile version of the game working. But I do think that that's a very, very tall order, where there's just so much detail in our game compared to other sort of idle style games, or games like this, that it makes it very, very challenging to get all of that important information across on a mobile screen. So if I had infinite time and infinite money, that would be something that I'd like to solve. But I'm not entirely convinced that it is actually solvable for our particular game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's it's sort of what's the way to say it? If you could be a designer for a day rather than a designer developer, I mean, you'd have to be. There are lots of things you could change, but you'd have to have the time and to change them. Like if there was a system that we could go back and like adjust, I would think that the effects system could use, like, I don't know what we'd be at like a 4th iteration or something of the design on that, because certainly one of the things that we had changed in that when we moved from Crusaders was changing it so that the sort of the effects all kind of had a parent effect, and then they would only recalculate the effects down the line, like the values, so that we didn't have to keep recalculating everything every time. And then somewhere along the lines we lost that connection, and or effects started reaching in places that needed to cause full recalculations on the regular, and that's what made that system get slower and slower and slower over time. And so something that could go in and a redesign on that system so that it had fewer calculations required per update would just make the game run faster in general, right? I mean, it's like the question that was asked at the beginning of the show about the hitching and stalling in the game is, this isn't a loading issue or a graphic issue or a performance issue of where you typically see in sort of like a your average game. This is the effects system recalculating something more than it should be, and that would be a system that if we could if we could have infinite time to work on, that would solve that. That would be something worth doing, but we just don't. That would be a full year-long project, I think, to sort of redo that in a way that worked with the existing effects.
Yeah. Lanarev in chat said, if you had time, infinite time and infinite money, and you'd do that? It's like, all right, now I meant 4 idle champions.
Yes, that's right. If you had infinite time, money, you're like, all right.
I think it's possible the show might not happen.
If you had infinite money, maybe you do what you do.
I don't know what I'd do. Probably try to build some rockets and fly to Mars, like other people who have infinite money. Okay, let's see.
Next question. Do you want to ask it, or am I asking it?
Sure, yeah. The next question here is from Phoenixian Ultimatum, and they ask, it seems that this show is one of the best, if not the only, ways for the player base.
I feel like there's more to that.
I feel like there was more to that sentence. I imagine it's supposed to say to connect with you guys, like the developers.
Ask questions, or give feedback.
As such, it's almost impossible for people with conflicting schedules to do so, or to, when this show is done, or arrive early enough to get their questions in. Any thoughts on doing a separate show / YouTube video / Reddit Q&A where questions are submitted in advance or independently of Twitch chat?
Yeah,
so basically, for people who can't tune in, a way to ask questions.
And I think specifically to us.
Yes.
Because obviously,
we do have a Reddit Q&A on Wednesdays, I think it runs, or Tuesdays, someday earlier in the week. And of course, there's Idle Insights runs just before this. Obviously, Mars has his show, I think 4 or 5 days a week, several hundred times a week, as far as I know.
He's almost at 500 episodes.
Yeah. We got a long way to go to catch up with him.
We're never catching up.
474 as of this morning. Yeah. And of course, Star Wars guide and stuff like that. So I think there are opportunities to talk about the game, but definitely in terms of opportunities to ask us specifically, yeah, I guess this is kind of the option for it. I think we've talked about potentially doing like submitting questions ahead of time on like Reddit and then getting those together based on like upvotes and stuff. But I think I don't remember the exact reason that we haven't wanted to do that. I think it's mainly just around resourcing and kind of stuff. Like, you and I kind of get together at around 1:30 on Thursdays and pull together a script and make sure that the sound is working perfectly.
Thanks.
And so
sure, mention the sound again.
Hey, I'll mention.
I would have had it right
in
the other room this time. I would have. I swear.
I'll
we'll
mention
never know.
The sound. You mentioned prime numbers. We'll both just have our things that we can't do, and so yeah, I think at some point maybe we could do something like that. But the format that we've had has been working for us. We always get far more questions than we can answer on the shows anyway. So yeah, I'm not sure. Do you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely something that has been asked before, and I think sort of the biggest concern is sort of the resourcing of our time, because otherwise that time gets spent on, actual development and design for the game or for other things that are happening here at Codename. So it's sort of we don't have a whole lot of time that we can allocate from Justin and I to do this. As far as like, doing an additional time or more time, that's always been a bit of a problem. And I know there's been requests, for example, to make the show longer, which runs into the same problem. We have seen players bring questions from the Discord. I know some players have asked on behalf of other players, which is one thing that you can do. I do think, sort of as Justin said, we do get quite a few questions, often more than we can answer, of course, which is why we answer some from the previous show at the top of the show each time. They've sort of handpicked the ones that make seem like the most interesting. So I think if we were to bring in a big list from Reddit or from somewhere else that's been curated, that just sort of eats into the time of the people who've come to bring their questions. So I think it's tricky. I would suggest that, asking on behalf of players is a way that does seem to work. Otherwise, I mean, you can always submit questions in through the other channels or through tickets. But yeah, certainly getting our attention directly onto it, this is the best way to do it. But I don't really have a perfect solution for anyone who's sort of outside of the time zone or can't attend live. Okay. Next question. This is from Cassius335, and they would like to know if the critical hit numbers can be changed to not yellow, so they stop being the same color as gold. They're suggesting perhaps a nice blue.
Are they exactly the same color as the gold pickup?
I can't picture it.
I also can't picture it.
I didn't think so. I thought they were oranger. But I could be wrong.
They were a slightly different color, because I know we iterated on that a couple of times when we were putting in crit as part of that, or when we were redoing crit rather as part of that season. Yeah, I mean that's something we can look at and see if we can adjust that. Of course, we always talk about we need to have that option where you can, the one where you can change all of the keys. We also need to have one where you can change all of the colors of everything. And just anything that's programmatically done with colors, you can set that in your options to whatever color you want. So clearly, we just need to implement that. But we can take a look at that and see what's going on there. If they are very, very close, then I think we could probably change that.
Yes. As for the previous questions, players are saying they're going to appreciate the full 24-hour stream on February 8th. I don't think I agreed to that. Okay.
Let's see. Okay, next question here is from OG17. It's a dithering question. They say chest screen art has been hit hard by file compression. There are 6 of their previous file size. Looking at the files, every chest spreadsheet contains around 4 images for the chest and then 3 dozen images for opening effects, which are shared across every sheet. If these effects were stored once, could quality be restored to the actual chest art? Oh, we're getting into the nitty gritty.
Yeah. I think the short answer on that is yes. That's the short answer.
It does seem like it.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, that system were broken apart into two sets of animations and those animations were synced up, then we could have just the chest opening portion be separate, which could mean that we could lower the quantization on the chests. I'll have to take a look at it. I don't remember it looking, again, here's the thing, like I don't remember this looking particularly bad, because I know we looked at that one, or was there some issues in the actual visual effect flare that was not so great looking? Yeah, I mean, this is definitely something that certainly a few individuals have brought up, but I'm not sure sort of how impactful it's been. One of the questions actually that we had, I think Peter brought up, was like he wondered if maybe players were using the art somewhere else, and that's why this was a problem, like they loaded it into a website for display or something. Someone will have to let me know if that's the case. Yeah, I mean, certainly if we could find the time to split out those animations, then we could have the same file savings without having the quantization on the chests. I'm not actually entirely sure why we ended up having like the visual effect built right into that animation still. Might have just sort of been the easiest way for art to do it, and then it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew from a chest standpoint. Because certainly when we first implemented that, we weren't thinking about it from a standpoint of having hundreds of them. Yeah. Anyway.
There are a lot of chests in the game. How many chests are there? 605. That's a lot of chests.
I'm seeing in the chat sort of the emote saying I put a lot of assets on my spoiler site and most of the new portraits look bad. I see. So I mean, I could see that being why someone would notice it more than other. And I assume from the new portraits, actually I can't necessarily assume is that the portraits in the classic style or the console style, because certainly we don't want to make them look bad, but certainly the intention there wasn't to make things look bad. It was to make things look minimally different while saving a large amount of download and space. But certainly some of them could be a little bit too aggressive for the actual art that's in them.
Cool. Okay. The next question here, we'll do one more question, then we'll do that giveaway because that's where it is in our list.
Okay.
The next question here is from Emote, who says, so I recently pulled my formation save data with a server call to see the kind of information it has. Interesting stuff. But while I was peeking, I noticed there's a campaign ID -1 that has all the formations I've deleted, over 500 of them. The last time I deleted a formation was weeks ago. Do these never get cleaned up?
Interesting.
Have you not been cleaning up your old save formation database, Dave?
That's a good question. I mean, so one of the things that one of the what would be the sort of conventions that we take for dealing with data is that we really do avoid deleting records whenever possible, just because it's one of those things where
can't undo it.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's just as you can't undo it, and so we try to avoid doing actual data deletion. Usually, we just mark things as like removed. This case, it does feel like potentially there could be some advantage to removing some of those. If you're getting up at like 500 is clearly a lot of data that's otherwise going to get transferred back and forth when you start the game and you get transferred out to a play server, which is definitely not ideal, as well as if that data is coming back with the save, like when you when you do a load call, that's also not ideal. Actually, it's particularly not ideal that it's sending back what are effectively the deleted ones.
Yeah, that seems like that would be an easy fix, to just have the handler just ignore campaign ID -1 ones.
That seems like an oversight. Yeah, we may or may not delete them from your actual save, but not sending them back might be a smart thing to do in that case.
Yeah, I think I think there's some cleanup we can do there. I know there are. So, I guess just to get into, we can kind of speak very briefly about kind of
You're gonna get into the weeds, are you?
How the data works. But basically, we've got like a master database where everyone who's ever played the game is stored there, and then people who are actively playing the game, we store them on some smaller databases, because smaller databases tend to run faster than bigger databases. And so we load all your data out from the big database onto the smaller database. when you're playing, we do all of your queries and stuff there and update all your data there. And then we take the data from the small database and move it back to the big database once you're done playing, once you haven't played for a while, or periodically while you're playing.
Is this the explain it like I'm 5? Is this
yes,
the...
essentially. But so the reason we don't do deletes is because we don't want to, if we delete stuff from the small database, when we're copying back to the big database, we don't want to have to check to see if every record needs to be deleted, or if it just needs to be updated, or if it needs to be inserted as a new record, because that's super friggin' slow. And so instead, we just kind of reuse the same records, or set them to like have a campaign ID of -1, for example, and then just copy those back over. So we never actually do any deletes when we're copying data back from the small server into the big server, which is why we have situations like this where, to delete a formation save, we set its campaign ID to -1, and then ideally we just don't return that anymore. But what we should do is when we're loading out from the big server to the little server, we should just not load out records with a campaign ID of -1, and then it would just kind of clean this stuff up on itself or on its own over time. So there's definitely stuff we can do, but obviously something got missed here.
Yeah.
Anyway.
They're going to need you to put a PowerPoint presentation together, apparently, Justin.
All right. We'll see what we can do. Maybe on February 8th.
One-man reenactment of the day.
All right. So it looks like we've got our world-famous 42 chest giveaway. This is no fair. I can't peek at Dave's screen and see what kind of chest he's searching for today. So the way this works is very, very shortly there will be a keyword in chat. I've actually got a spoiler. It's dev7 today, but the 7's in binary. And so you'll type that into chat once CNE Games or Moobot says it's time to go. And that'll enter you for a chance to win 42 chests of your choice. It can be any type of chest that exists in the game. But it has to be a chest that exists in the game. I like Modron component chests. What kind of chests do you like, Dave? Oh, I can't.
There we go.
I
like relational chests, graph chests, cloud chests. I'm a big fan of distributed chests. I think those
types of databases.
Oh, you got it.
Yay! How'd you do it today's connections, by the way?
I got it after. What was the one that? I only had 2. I already got 2. I got 2 errors. Trying to remember what the third category was.
I was never going to get the purple category today. If people don't know what we're talking about, it's been sweeping the office. There's a New York Times online game called Connections where you have to basically play the British game show Only Connect by yourself. It's super fun. Anyway.
Can be, except for Tuesdays. Tuesdays was awful.
Tuesdays are hard. Yeah. Anywho, good luck to everyone who's entering that giveaway, and let us move on to our next questions.
Okay, next question is from Phoenixian Ultimatum. It seems the week to week we're consistently seeing and hearing similar questions or questions that are any follow-up on a certain topic. Can we get something, like for example a website, Discord channel, etc., that is updated semi-regularly that can act as a communication on where things are on these fronts?
Yeah, first I wanna get a debate going in the chat. Is it semi or semi? How do people pronounce that? I think I pronounce it semi. Semi-regularly.
It really doesn't matter. Once you run over with one, you're dead. So
so yeah, I think this kind of falls in the same category as the question we got earlier about getting the questions early on other platforms, right? On like Reddit or whatnot. It just becomes an additional kind of thing that we have to maintain, that in all likelihood we would probably start doing it, and then very shortly after we would give it up, and it would just end up being kind of out of date perpetually. So it is a challenge. It's a challenge to do this kind of thing. I don't know. I think it'd be a cool thing to do, but I think we're better off just kind of talking about things, again, in the channel and giving you updates in person, and it allows us to kind of give you the most up-to-date news. and gives us something to talk about if there's less questions in a given week.
Semi up to date news.
Yes, semi up to date news.
All right. Next question. This is from Emote. Did you decide not to make the achievement for completing all of the Waterdeep adventures and variants? Did you?
No, you know what? I could have sworn we did do an achievement for this. I'm gonna highlight this because I am pretty sure that we designed an achievement for this. I'm going to take the step of actually trying to look it up while I'm live here in our design documents. Waterdeep Dragon Heist. I need access. No. Switch
You
accounts.
signed into the wrong account.
Signed into my personal account. Like I'm signed into this meeting on my work account. But anyway, let's see here.
Fascinating stuff, Justin.
I don't know if it would be in here. Anyway, what's the next question while I look at this?
Next question is from OG17, asking, can Thora get a feat for Rush to round favor down to the nearest value ending in 0 or 5, so her ability would always land on the first area of a block, so that players don't need to manually control favor for automation to work? This would be good to do before spending favor on legendaries is removed. I haven't been using her. These specific things might be off.
Yeah, so I think we did talk about this last episode of sort of ways to have caps on Thalora's stuff. I think it came up when we were talking about Briv jumping or Briv skipping or favor. I think maybe it actually came up with the season conversion thing, but it was in relation to kind of optimizing your Briv farm with Thora. And I think that the point at which we kind of try and find a more permanent solution for Briv is kind of the time that we would probably do something like this for Thora as well. So yeah, I could see doing that. Yeah, no, I'm not seeing one in the database, so I feel like we haven't actually put it in. But I could have sworn because we were for the Waterdeep thing, we were kind of joking about what the various names for it could be. Like yeah, water done I think came up, and yeah, champion of Waterdeep, boring stuff like that. But yeah, pretty sure we're supposed to have one. So I'll highlight that, and I will probably check in with. I'm not sure who I check in with that about. I'll bring it up with Peter and see if he knows anything about that tomorrow.
Okay. Where are we at?
We are on question 16. We've gotten through tons of questions in this 45 minutes.
Yikes. All right, next question. This is from Foolish Genius 89. Are there any ideas for different ways to do health bars on bosses beyond segmented and armored health to increase the boss diversity mechanically?
Yeah. This is an interesting kind of thing, because it's kind of what can we do within kind of the limits of the game, and you know, the limits of the mechanics, which is basically like champions attacking is what kind of can tick health down. I know we did sort of the most recent thing we did was the Tiamat boss that had like 4 or 5 different health bars, and they kind of came on and went away and did stuff like that. So we do try and do some cool boss mechanics from time to time. Mars made a note here that we've got one of the event bosses has a drow that is invincible until her minions are killed, which I guess is pretty cool. We've done that just that one time. Obviously, we've got some bosses like the Kraken in Fleet's Wake, who has a bunch of tentacles and stuff that pop up. So I think there's some stuff we do with this. I think we haven't found anything that's kind of just as reusable as hits based and armor based health at this point. But I think we're always on the lookout for cool stuff like that.
Okay. Next question. This is from Namonto 10 or 1010
Convert it into base 10. It's a 2, an 8, and a 20, 32. So
It's 42. It's 42.
Yeah. And Monto 42 asks,
is there a way to change skins from the collection screen? And if not, would it be easy to add?
So the collection screen isn't out yet. What are you doing in the collection screen? But there is an update to the collection screen coming out that will have skins in it. I think right now it does not.
It does not allow you to set your skin from this.
There.
No.
I think the reason I had this question is because we do have this update to the collection screen that is coming out at some point in the future, and hopefully we'll know when by February 8th. And there's a bunch of stuff that it's going to do when it comes out. But I think one of the things for me that I'm very aware of is there's a bunch of stuff it's going to do when it comes out, and then there's going to be a bunch of stuff that players are going to want it to do immediately after it comes out. And so I think that this is one of those things that, since you've asked, we might try and sort of fit it in before it comes out. But I also expect there to be a whole bunch of basically the dev insights after the collections dialogue goes out. I expect to be filled with, can you have it do this? Can you have it do that? Can you have it do this? And I imagine most of our responses to that will be, yeah, that's a pretty cool idea. We'll pass that on. Yeah, it's a pretty cool idea. We'll add that to the list. Yeah, that's a pretty cool idea. And then maybe one or two where it's like, no, that's an awful idea. Why would you think that? So yeah, I think that I think stuff like this would be good. And I'll put this one on the list to try and do before it comes out. And I will look forward to all of the feedback we get on it after it does come out.
That's true. And it doesn't sing, it doesn't dance, and it doesn't make sandwiches. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it should. I mean, but,
Okay.
By ChatGPT.
Next question. This is from OG17, and they would like to know, would D&D 5e shifting to 1 D&D mean anything to the game?
Should have made this purple so we could both answer it, but
so it's great. You can't,
Bam! I've changed it. So the short answer is probably not in the short term. The game's been out for 6.5 years now, and so I doubt we'd be making any like immediate changes across the board. I know like 1 D&D is trying to get rid of some of the it gets rid of a couple of mechanics that were in 5e and before, and I doubt we would just go ahead and try and get rid of those mechanics if they exist in our game as well. Certainly there are other D&D games like Dungeons and Dragons Online, which came out I don't know how many years ago at this point. Initially came out based on 3.5, and I don't think they made like huge mechanical changes when 4th edition or 5th edition came out, so they're still kind of working on 3.5, and I imagine we'd be fairly similar, where if there was anything sort of major that changed in 1 D&D, we would probably not shift anything major in our game to align with that unless it really made sense for the game in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's pretty like obvious about our game versus a 5e game is that we're not using a lot of like the numerical mechanics, right? Like, so those rules
not
are
level 6,000 characters in 5e.
No, it takes a really long time to get there. Actually, it's a really long campaign before you get to that level. So typically sort of the changes to the rule sets don't impact us. And then as far as like changes to characters or lore or terminology, I don't think, like, it's not typical that we would go back in and change those unless it was something that was very specifically requested that be changed, sort of. So I don't expect to see too much change from that. I mean, likely what would happen is that sort of as we go forward, new characters, new campaigns, new storylines would move into any sort of changes that they had made, but we probably wouldn't sort of backwards change things that were already in existence in the game, unless for some reason that it came up and they were specifically requested that happen. But yeah, because this is another question further down asking about like the terminology on the word I got wrong, key changed to focus or whatever they change it to. And I don't think so. I don't think that's something we'd go in and change unless, like I said, unless it was something that was specifically requested.
Yeah, it might be something that we just wouldn't create any new characters to who used it.
We create a conflict where new ones would have focus or whatever they call it, and the old one would be key.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. This is from Random. Binary. Is there any chance we will ever get the 101% damage achievement for completing all... Oh, crap. What number is that?
It's very clearly 1,001,100.
Adventures and variants. Just going to not calculate that myself and just type it in. 76.
Yes, this is the same question as we got a couple ago. I just I just wanted to highlight it because it was because they actually asked in binary, like I asked them to specify their base.
76.
So thank you, Randram, for listening to me when I asked these very important and very legitimate requests.
Good 76 and yeah. It's the future. I'm a bit. Pick a number between 1 and 10. Whoever's closest, you die first. It's like 56-ish. No.
Yes.
All right.
No,
Next.
I know the bit because anyway.
Next question. This is from Sinister Beer. Instead of updating the Electrum chest priorities, wouldn't it be easier to just visually fill in any gaps without changing the eye levels?
I'm not sure if they mean like just once you get like a rare item just in the collection showing the uncommon and the common even if you never got them.
That's kind of how I read it, but
which I think is kind of boring. You gotta collect those items in order for them to show up in the collection dialogue. Otherwise, it's just cheating. Yeah, I think the Electrum chests changes. We're doing an update to Electrum chests as part of the collection dialogue rollout. That will make it so that if an Electrum chest can't find an upgrade for you, it will then look for slots that you haven't filled in. So uncommon, common, and rare items that you might not have gotten from chests just due to bad luck, and drop those one of those items for you instead. So it shouldn't really change how Electrums give out items initially. It's just once you're out of upgrades for them to give, they'll go and look for those the backfill.
Yeah, I had to second that. I think having them just appear is not the same as having actually, gotten a version of that item. But all right, here's a fun question.
Yeah, you want me to ask you this?
Sure, why not?
For it? Okay, so Cassius335 asks, has Codename ever considered developing a non-live service? Has Codename ever considered developing a non-live service game? I can't even say it because I'm so used to just live service. Non-live service game for casual pickup play, like Bushwhacker Kart or some such.
Bushwhacker Kart. So that's like, I assume this is like Mario Kart.
Yeah.
Or Wacky Wheels.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what Wacky Wheels is.
That cuts deep. That's an old game.
It checks out.
Any fans of Wacky Wheels out there in the chat?
That was a great game.
That was a great game.
Better than Scunny Kart.
Oh, Scunny Kart. Oh, those were the days. This is really taking me back. Next thing you're going to be like stunts.
Personally, I'm a big fan of Diddy Kong Racing. There was a game.
See, Diddy Kong Racing is a little bit more well-known, I think, than Wacky Wheels or
that's true.
Kart.
Not PC games from 1994.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so this is an interesting question. It is certainly something that we have talked about doing in the past. It's not something that I think we've ever put a lot of actual resourcing onto as something to do, although it is something that, that we've considered. I mean, technically speaking, we did release a few sort of casual games back a long time ago now.
Yeah.
We had some iOS games like Egg Drop. They certainly didn't have the same level of success that we had with our live service games, which is kind of why we ended up primarily focusing on the live service games. So there's that, which is often sort of a really defining or deciding factor for what we end up working on. But
yeah, I mean the big difference between live service and non-live service is with non-live service games, you spend a bunch of money making the game, and then you release it, and you basically have to make back all that money pretty quickly because the sales charts for non-live service games kind of go up, but then they just go down. Whereas with live service games, you can kind of make that money back over time, and so you don't have to do it in the first month's worth of sales. You can do it over the first year's worth of sales or stuff like that, which is why that's worked out better for us.
Yeah, make a scene equivalent of Monkey Island or Final Fantasy. Yep, that's. I know Adam would be excited about
we'll
that.
Just toss together a Final Fantasy game, no problem.
Yeah, I'm working on one on the side of my desk right now. Don't you know?
I do know. I've seen it.
You've seen it, yeah.
You should really be working.
I know. Anyway, next. Oh no, we don't have time for the next question.
Yeah, no, I think these questions will have to get moved on to next week's show because we are out of time. But don't worry, as we said earlier in the show, you will have another opportunity. We will be live again at this same time next week, assuming that I'm not more sick than I am today.
You better not be.
Before we sign off, though, we'd like to thank our tireless mods. This week, it was Mars and Gabe.
Okay.
Copy your questions into our questions doc and make things awesome in chat. Thanks to both of you.
And of course, thanks to all of you for hanging out, watching the stream, asking such great questions, and for enjoying the game, because without you, no one here would get to do what we do.
And we like what we do.
All right. That's it. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Bye.
Oh, man. I'm really looking forward to the Fibonacci convention later this year.
Oh, yeah?
It is supposed to be as big as the last two put together.
Wow. It says here I'm supposed to groan, but I actually like that one.
Mm-hmm.